When Dr. Mike hit me up on Instagram and was in my DMs, I went to the set the next day and showed Isa Briones, and I was the coolest kid on set that day because you're a rock star. Oh my goodness.
On this episode of The Checkup, we're joined by the one and only Noah Wyle. In case you missed the last 30 years of medical dramas, let me fill you in. Noah Wyle is an award-winning actor who gained nationwide recognition for Dr. John Carter on ER, a role he played for well over a decade, which literally helped define modern medical TV dramas. But now he's back in the hospital with HBO's hit new series, The Pitt, where he also serves as executive producer and writer. The show has quickly become your doctor's favorite medical show, known authenticity with frontline healthcare have also garnered some attention. I was lucky enough to visit Noah and the team on set. Beyond his screen work, Noah is actively involved in humanitarian and medical causes, supporting organizations that aim to improve global health and the well-being of frontline healthcare workers. In this episode, we dive into a range of juicy topics, from his medical expertise as a Hollywood-trained doctor to what we can expect from season 2 of The Pitt. Cannot be more excited to welcome Noah Wyle to the Checkup Podcast. Let's get started. Well, look, you've mastered the art of being a doctor on television. I mean, if we're being honest about it, you have more medical training than I do. During residency, you're spending 3 years in the hospital. I've been practicing for 10 years, but in terms of seasons, you have more years spent in a hospital than I do. What's that like?
Yes. In a trajectory that actually would have landed me some sort of degree. It seems kind of pathetic how much time I've spent in hospitals and around doctors and how little I actually know. But yes, it's gratifying. It's also incredibly ironic given my academic record.
Were you not a good student?
I was, it's funny. Recently, we had our 9-year-old tested because she's had some issues in math, and we were wondering if there were some cognitive things. And it came back that she was very mildly ADHD. And as the doctor was deciding, we're getting really jittery and just sort of antsy. Yeah. And I realized, oh my goodness, I think I'm self-diagnosing myself at the age of 50. It just tracks that if I had any interest in it, then I had the ability to deep dive focus like pulling teeth. So yes, my math and science were difficult struggles for me. I appreciate them in different things. Somebody would, you take a drama class and they talk about the mathematics in a poem, and you're like, what, mathematics in a poem? Physics doesn't intimidate me anymore, right, because it's a goal to get to understanding the mechanics of flight, right?
Yeah. So isn't that just a description of why our education system perhaps isn't the best?
One of the many. One of the many.
Because if you think about it, a good educator will find a way to. And I've never been someone who loved math, even though my mom was a math professor, PhD, and it loved it, tried to pass it on to me. I viewed it as work, as something I had to sit and drill and do over and over, innovating and exciting to learn as opposed to a chore. So I think really it's the educator.
I'm rereading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance for somewhat creative reasons having to do with between a romantic viewpoint versus a classical viewpoint. One appreciates the aesthetics and what makes it up. And it's very rare that you find the combination of both of those sensibilities. That's what I've been trying to figure out for myself, is how to combine those.
Is that because you see how, and I think that's a big reason for why misinformation is so prevalent on social media. Because in order to practice good medicine, with abdominal pain, I say, well, it might be appendicitis, but it also might be these 3 other things. I'm being a good doctor because I'm telling you the truth. I can't with 100% certainty tell you what's going on. And then even treatment-wise, I can tell you what is the first line, whereas a lot of these influencers on social media, people on television who've done snake oil stuff, they come in, they say, you have headaches? You're not consuming enough pink Himalayan sea salt. That's the problem. In reality, that hedge is way more honest.
Well, they go even farther to say, doctors will tell you.
Yeah, doctors didn't tell you it's because of the pink Himalayan
But they don't
sea
want
salt.
you to know.
Yeah, exactly.
Big Pharma doesn't want you to know. Yeah.
Have you ever...
Ab exercisers I've purchased in my life. I have
fast abs? Like one of those?
I have a whole room in my and electrostimulations, and oh my God, I'm such a sucker.
That was your...
If there's a quick way to good abs, man, I'm on it.
Well, they say abs are... Why abs? Why was that always a goal for you? Or was it a role that you were
it was just for? We all have our body dysmorphia. That's
Sure.
the one area of the body that I'm like,
Fair.
Genetically,
You would
doesn't seem like wily men ever got them.
Okay.
And then I have a son who's 22 and a bit of an Adonis, and completely dispelled the theory that wily men can't put on dense muscle.
Okay, there you go. So you just didn't have the right tool.
Yeah.
You got to ask him what
or
tool he's
motivation,
using.
perhaps, or discipline.
That's fair. Well, look, you were talking about almost downplaying the idea that
Instead of going to medical school or getting a proper education, you chose this path. But you've actually done a tremendous service to medical providers, potential medical providers, people who ended up in the field because of you. I know you tell stories frequently of folks coming up to you How does that happen? How does someone watch ER, The Pitt, and then change their life trajectory on it? How does that feel for you?
It's pretty heady, and very, very flattering and gratifying. It was most profoundly felt for me during the pandemic when I was receiving a lot of mail from first responders who were just saying, everything from we could really use Carter out here to, thanks for getting me into this or keeping me inspired while I'm going through it. And I felt really gratified and also so useless, so skillless at that moment to really be able to help in any meaningful way. That was the catalyst for wanting to explore a show around what was happening in healthcare again. And I reached out to John Wells and said, maybe we should get into this again. And that's where the Pitt kind of came from, was feeling like I wanted to be contemporary and relevant in these practitioners' lives with what they were going through now and not just be anecdotal to what they did in the 90s. And so that's what we ended up doing. But to answer your question even more
specifically, like it's amazing. It's amazing to think that you've done something with your life that inspired someone to go into a service industry where they may have had a hand in saving countless lives. Yeah, again, discrediting yourself. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, the amount of people who use ER as the reason why they went into medicine is huge. And I'm not talking about this from a philosophical standpoint. I interview residents for our residency program, and it's referenced so often. And now
that conversation is shifting to the Pitt with med students being excited about it. I speak very frequently at colleges, medical associations, and the Pitt comes up almost every time.
Out of necessity, we needed to have another show to inspire a new generation to go into these fields.
Now tell me, why did it go to the Pitt versus ERV2?
Well, originally that was the delivery system we thought would be easiest to employ. And then we got into a little bit of a rights debacle with the Crichton camp, and it became a non-starter. And then, while we were licking our wounds and kind of doing a postmortem on where it went wrong, we actually found that it was probably better that it didn't come as an ER reboot, because it would have had so much attendant narrative baggage,
Right.
So many Easter eggs you'd want to pay off for fans and who's going to come back, that it would have, I think, muddied the waters of the message we were trying to say about what's going on right now. This allowed us
Start fresh.
to
Clean
take
slate.
the same Trojan horse, but put a whole new cast of characters inside of me, and then, start fresh.
What I liked about the character of John Carter is I related to him to some degree. He came in happy-go-lucky, maybe not the sharpest doctor as an intern, and then really had a turnaround where there was a skill settler. There was a person who was very capable at their job. Did you realize that would happen with his character arc, or was that something that developed organically?
Well, you never have a
crystal ball on how long shows are going to run for, and there was no guarantee ER was going to get past the pilot. But I did recognize in the pilot script that where all the other doctors were proficient second, third, and fourth years, I was the med student, so the arc ahead of me would have been the largest if the show continued. And then because I was the stumbling, bumbling medical student and somewhat the comic relief, that character's maturation
and embracing of his own manhood, his own skill set as a physician, and in his particular case, his own blue-blooded upbringing, which he was sort of living in both guilt and denial about, all kind of paced out beautifully over 15 long years, and afforded me an opportunity to play a character in a way that very few actors are ever given a chance to, which is to basically grow up inside of it.
Yeah, that's 12 seasons because you took some time off.
I did the
for your
first
child,
11
right?
seasons, a few episodes of the 12th, and then took 13th and 14th off and came back and did sort of half or eight episodes in the 15th season.
I mean, you sort of know what a doctor is going through because that wasn't filmed in Los Angeles, right?
The ER was filmed in LA.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, we filmed at Warner Brothers, the same studio where we're shooting The Pitt. I can see the soundstage where we filmed ER from where we work. Across 300 feet and 15 years, 15 pounds, and,
So when you were referencing earlier that the last 10 or 15 years you weren't filming in LA, these are future projects that you were working on after ER?
After ER, everything I did, I worked on a series that shot in Portland, Oregon. I worked on a series that shot in Toronto. I worked on a series that shot in Vancouver. I worked on a series that shot in New Orleans. And then
So when the idea of the
jobs.
Pitt came about, were you like, please film it here, not
Yes,
in
well, the
Pittsburgh?
benefit of working with John Wells and Scott Gemmell is we're all old men who are getting sort of fussy about not wanting to be away from home much. So that was the first flag we planted, was let's plant it in LA. And I've also become a bit of a outspoken advocate for keeping work in LA because we've had a real exodus the last few years. We lost 21,000 jobs in Los Angeles between 2021 and 2023. Between the pandemic and the strikes, it's been devastating to our industry. And then these latest fires were even more crippling because a lot of the people that lost homes we're people that have been working in our industry for generations. So I've become part of a grassroots campaign called Stay in LA that's trying to get both the tax credit lifted for production in California and to ask studios and streamers to allocate a little bit more of their budgets to keeping work in the epicenter of where it all started.
Wow. So you're advocating not just for doctors, but also
I'm advocating for everybody.
for everyone.
I'm actually going to D.C. at the end of next week with the nurses union to speak to a couple members on the Hill about a few pieces of legislation aimed at both equal pay and workplace protection.
Which is important given the fact that healthcare abuse is so underreported, sometimes completely neglected, and there is no policy on the books of mandatory sentences.
It's a federal crime to assault a
Bus driver,
bus
MTA
driver.
worker. Yeah.
The idea that you can assault a practitioner or frontline worker without penalties is egregious, and the incidents are, I'm sure you know, they're happening more and more frequently as a byproduct of patients waiting longer and longer and coming in sicker, as a byproduct of overcrowding, and the whole thing is systemic. But at the end of the day,
it's the people that are taking care of us that are getting hurt. Yeah. What difference in your life from taking care of your own health have you changed in playing these roles as a doctor for so long? Like any doctor, I don't think about my own health at all. We're immortal, aren't we, Mike? Yeah. Well, I love that ironically, we're almost both Dr. Mike. Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense. It's like two Dr. Mikes. In our white sneakers and our crossed legs, doppelganging each other. But doctors are the worst hypocrites. Yes. And I think it's partially for dark reasons. The fact that we've seen so much that our tolerance of what bad is so much more broad than the person who, oh no, my stomach hurts. Is it something terrible? Whereas we've seen someone's just bowels come out and we say, oh, well, that's fixable. I also think, and this is speculation because, again, I'm not a real doctor, but you have to compartmentalize to such a degree that I find the same thing's true when doctors, misdiagnose their own children frequently. Mm-hmm. And there's ethical rules about not treating somebody that you have an emotional relationship with for that reason. I think that bleeds compartments for physicians. Mm. When you take that focus that's always
outward gazing and apply it inward in any way, it throws the calibration off a little bit. So I think you could say it's darkness, but I think it has more to do with self-protection. You know? Once you open that door a little bit to your own vulnerability and admit that you have the same potential to fall prey to everything that you're treating, it's sort of slippery slope. I think there's a stage in medical school that, from what I've read, that people go through this hypochondriatic stage.
Exactly. It flips.
Where suddenly you get this education and you realize, holy shit, all this could happen to me. Yeah. I think I have all of this all the time. And then you kind of have to tamp that down and put it in its proper perspective, right?
Does that happen with acting as well?
Yes, I think it's sort of, like chess playing. When you learn how to play something that is infinitely complex, the more you realize the variables you'll never learn, the more you get humbled by the prospect of the education, I think that's true with acting, that you learn mechanics and then that just frees you to learn how much more there is to play with, right?
Right. It's frequently the line that folks say about the smartest people in the room are not who know the most, but who have the best questions.
I try to preach that to my kids all the time. Just be curious.
Yeah.
Just be curious and all the doors were open.
Yeah. Was that your strategy for your success?
I think I've been really sort of mercurial in the way that I look about, I get turned on by all sorts of different things, and because of that, and occasionally I'll find a reason to draw from it. Writing has become a really significant part of my life, and writing on the Pitt was one of the great achievements I've had so far. And it was the first time I realized that as I was running a medical show, I was pulling in things that were interesting to me about philosophy, or things that happened when I was a kid when my grandmother died, or something that, a joke that I have always loved. And you realize, no, this is all there for a reason. I've collected it all. I didn't know why, but there is a practical use for it eventually if you get there long enough.
Well, for someone who's writing the Pitt, acting on the Pitt, EP?
EP, and I'm going to direct this season as well.
And direct. I met you in the writer's room a few weeks ago. You guys are not just taking this seriously from a fictional standpoint. You're also taking it seriously from a factual standpoint. And that is rare. As someone who, I guess my career has become reviewing medical dramas, it's amazing how accurate, and it's not even
truthful. It's almost written by someone who's been there before. It is. We have board certified ER. Yeah, so tell us about the process of how you incorporate people's experiences, knowledge, in addition to making it a functional show. We have on our staff several secret weapons.
The biggest one is a man named Dr. Joe Sachs, who is the technical advisor on ER and also a writer and producer, board-certified ER doc. And Joe has what he proverbially calls his tickle truck. And we say, Joe, we need a really, harrowing case. And Joe goes, clamshell. And he brings to bear all of his medical career, as does Dr. Mel Herbert, as do our 3 on-set technical advisors, as do all the trauma nurses that we employ as our background.
There are so many experts floating around that we mine not just for their cases, but we ask the more uncomfortable questions, which is to sort of open their hearts and tell us how it felt and what they were afraid of and when they were most confident, least confident. And those are the things that we sort of are more interested in. And I think those are the things that people are responding to more. Is the medicine is the soundtrack, but
What you're watching is energy, behavior, relationship, hierarchy, confidence. Those are the things that are most relatable to people.
Do other shows not hire this level of staff to make sure
I
that
think other shows don't care as much to make that the point of the thesis. We came into this to be the most medically accurate show ever made.
That was the strategy?
Yes.
Wow, okay.
That was what we were doing, was trying to make a love letter to frontline workers and first responders to say, we see and hear what you've been going through the last several years, and we're going to build a show around a really great doctor who's having the worst day of his life because of it. And everything else will follow suit from there. We pass around pictures
from other shows. There was one where they intubated somebody with a yank hammer. Taped it in. There's a lot. There's people with Brillo pads as defibrillators. There's a lot of. We pass those pictures around as a point of pride that we take as seriously as we do. But all that gear on set, when I saw, it's crazy, right? You guys have a functioning hospital on the set. I hope we can donate it to a real ER when we're done. I hope that there won't be some practical issue of it's not certified as a. Oh, works great. It's really impressive, our set. It's so impressive. It didn't impress my 9-year-old who walked onto it thinking it looks like a hospital. I was expecting Hogwarts, and they're showing me look, this is a real hand soap dispenser. You're like, this is an X-ray machine. It's a portable chest X-ray. Didn't care. Wow. Well. How did the premise for the 24 hours or the 15 hours come about? Was that an initial point that you wanted to start with, or did that come about? That was Scott Gemmell. Scott Gemmell's contribution right off the bat was, I want to do something that reinvents the genre that we know so well. And he brought 2 sort of pillars along with that. One was I want to do it in real time and build a pressure.
देखिए बहुत ही अच्छा लोकेशन है आज देखिए वाओ अंधेरा हो गया है यहाँ पे देखिए अभी समय देखिए कितना सुहाना मौसम है ये देखिए वाह देखिए बहुत ही अच्छा लोकेशन है आज। देखिए वाह। अंधेरा हो गया है यहाँ पे। देखिए अभी समय देखिए कितना सुहाना मौसम है। ये देखिए वाह।